everybody. So today we are going to talk about the elements of art and principles of design. We're going to start with the elements of art. So there are 7 elements of art: line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space. Okay, so in your line section, we're going to write down this definition. A line is a mark made by a tool, a brush, pencil, stick, or pen. A line is created by the movement of a tool. So you can pause this if you need to. Write it down. Once you have the definition written down, what you are going to do is you are going to show me an example of a line. So a line can be curvy, it could be wavy, it could be scribbly, it could be a zigzag. So show me your example of a line next to your definition. A contour line is a line that indicates the edges and outlines of the shapes in the most simple way. So anytime you're doing a drawing, you are most likely doing a contour line drawing, just like these glasses here. Gesture lines are lines that indicate action and physical movement, and your eyes follow them across the page. So these are kind of scribbly drawings that are just really quick sketches to capture the movement of the body or the person or thing in motion. So these over here to the right are gesture lines. Implied lines are lines that often read edges of objects as implied lines. They can be dotted and short lines, and what they do is they create a picture. So over here to the right we have this image, and it looks like we have a woman sitting here reading a book. So those lines are not technically connected, but what our brain does is it puts those lines together and we see everything as a whole. Alright, next we are going to talk about shape. Shape is an area that is created by connecting a solid line or is contained within an implied line. So you can go ahead and pause it for now, and then when you're done with your definition, we'll resume in a moment. Okay, so there are many different types of shapes. We have organic and geometric. So geometric are the shapes that you can normally think of and name: triangle, square, rhombus, circle, diamond. Any of the shapes that have a name usually are a geometric shape. Now, there are other types of shapes, and they could be in the form of blobs. So these blobs are technically shapes because they're enclosed within a line. The line connects from one end to the other. However, they don't have, fancy names, but they still are shapes. So on your paper, I want you to draw me an example of one geometric shape and one organic shape. Okay, so positive space can be created using your drawing. So normally when you are drawing, you are putting something in the positive space. So our positive space would be this ram right here. However, shapes can still be created using the negative space. So we've blacked out the background so that you can still see the shape of the background. So in between the lamb's legs, for example, we have these kind of like rectangular kind of shapes. They're not quite a rectangle, they're an organic shape, but it's still a shape. So here are some just fun images where we might not be able to tell the difference between the positive and negative space. Some people would argue that these black two faces on either side of the screen are the positive space, and this white area is the background or the negative space. However, some people might argue that this white kind of candle-looking shape is the positive space, and all the black in the background is the negative space. What do you think it is? All right, let's talk about form. Form describes volume and mass, or the three-dimensional aspects of an object that take up space. So we have a few examples right here. Over here to the right, we have a circle. This is a shape. It's flat, it's two-dimensional, you can't pick it up and hold it in your hand. To the right is the form version of a circle. It's a sphere. It's like a ball. It has height, width, and depth. So just to reinforce this idea, same thing below. We have a cartoon drawing of the not the architectural, I'm sorry, the mythology, Apollo and Daphne. It's a cartoon. It's flat. You can't touch it. It doesn't have any, raised edges. It's a drawing. However, to the right, we have this beautiful, famous sculpture of Apollo and Daphne, but it has height, width, and depth. You can walk around it. If you're allowed to touch it in a art museum, you would be able to actually feel that it has form. However, you're never supposed to touch things in an art gallery. So what I would like you to do is in your paper, we're going to create the illusion of form. So just like this drawing right here, we're going to use some value and some shading to create the illusion that this circle here is actually round. So as it gets down towards the bottom of the circle, it should be really dark for the shadow. And as it comes up towards the top where the light would be hitting, it should get lighter. You want to kind of curve your pencil in kind of a C motion. That's going to create the illusion that this is round. So don't shade it back and forth straight across. You want to shade it in a C or a smiley shaped motion. All right, color. Color is the element of art that is produced when light striking an object is reflected back into the eye. So this one's a nice, easy one. You can just pick up your colored pencils and add a little bit of color. Let's dive a little bit deeper into color. So there are different types of color relationships. So one of these relationships are complementary colors. Complementary colors are just colors that are opposite of one another on the color wheel. They help each other pop out and stand out because of the contrast. So oftentimes logos or icons will use these color combinations, so orange and blue. So this is Firefox. This is an old internet browser, kind of like Google Chrome way back in the day. So we have the orange versus the blue. Christmas colors are complementary colors, and like the Minnesota Viking colors are complementary colors. This is a painting done by Seurat. He was one of the very first people to really work with the idea of complementary colors. So he would put these little tiny dabs of paint next to one another to create the different colors. So he would put the orange next to the blue, and this is called pointillism. This painting's huge. It would probably be the size of like a smartboard screen. So this painting is created completely using different colored dots and using complementary colors. Next, we're going to talk about value. All right, so we're going to write this down. Value, nice and quick and easy. Value is the use of lightness and darkness. That's all you have to write down. Value is the use of lightness and darkness. So we can create different values of a color. We can create a tint of a color by lightening it by adding white. So if you're painting, you're going to add white. You can create a shade of a color and darken it by adding black to a color when painting. Now you can also create value by just simply putting more pressure on your pencil. If you draw really lightly with your pencil, you're going to get a lighter tint of that pencil color. And as you put more pressure onto your pencil, it will create a darker shade of that pencil. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to add some value by putting a little bit of pressure on the right, and as you kind of color over towards the left, you're going to start to slowly put on more pressure so that it should slowly get darker as you're putting on more pressure. All right, let's talk about monochromatic. Monochromatic is when you're just using one color to create a work of art. So here's a famous work of art. This is Picasso's old guitar, and he's using almost all different tints and shades of blue. Here's some more modern examples at the bottom. So we have this portrait of this little girl that's in this, has different tints and shades of blue. These portraits of Michael Jordan, and then this one I love. This one was actually created with quilts. So this was done using fabric, so all different tints and shades of green in fabric. All right, let's talk about texture. So you do have to write down both of these because there's two different types of texture. There is actual texture, which describes the surface quality that we can feel with our fingers. So the rough, scratchy wood we would be able to touch. A tabletop is smooth. a cactus is prickly. It's something you can actually touch with your fingers. Simulated texture, which is also known as visual texture, can occur on a painting. So you're making it look the way that it should feel. So the grass and the grain on here looks really scratchy and rough. So we're making something look the way that it should feel. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about texture. You don't have to write this down, but here are some examples. So there's some contrast between smooth and textured areas that emphasizes heavy texture. The broken lines and edges help emphasize the actual texture. The painting with a dry brush helps create this visual texture. And the color and value contrast help you feel the texture with your eyes. Alright, so this one also has two different definitions, so you do need to write both of these down. So there are two types of space. There is actual space. So, for example, this statue here of Michelangelo, this was made by Michelangelo, but this is the statue of David. So this statue of David takes up actual space. It is a three-dimensional work of art that can be, emptied or filled with objects. So this work of art takes up actual space. A mug is something that takes up of actual space. You can put, coffee in it. You can hold it in your hand. So that is space. The other type of space is the illusion of space. So that is when you are creating a drawing or painting and it makes it feel like it's going back into the distance based on perspective. So we have a drawing down here. Even though this drawing isn't really real, we can't walk down it, it looks like we can. So one way to create the illusion of space is as things go back into the distance, they get higher, they get smaller and less detailed. So we have this little birdie here, and as it goes up, it gets a little bit smaller, and you see less and less detail. So you could do the same thing in your drawing. So create some kind of drawing where you have the same thing replicated. It could be a baseball, and as the baseball goes up and back towards the horizon line, which is kind of this invisible line right here, it's going to get smaller and smaller. Alright, so here is an example of space in a painting. So the hard edges are more vibrant in the foreground, and they have these really bright colors. While in the background, we have these softer colors. So it kind of makes it look a little bit more hazy and like it's in the distance. So up close, we have the harder edges, and it's much brighter colors, and as it goes back, we get these softer edges and the more hazy colors. Another way to create this illusion of perspective is having the buildings overlap on one another. The size of the people gets smaller, just like we talked about in the last slide. As they go back into space, the images of people get smaller as they go back into space. Alright, next we're going to switch to our other sheet for the principles of design. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the elements of art, and we are going to write down each of the definitions, and then we are going to draw some kind of example so that you can show me that you understand each of these different definitions. Okay, so there are also 7 principles of design. We have balance, movement, rhythm, contrast, emphasis, pattern, and unity. Alright, the first one we are going to talk about is balance. Balance refers to the distribution of visual weight in a work of art. Balance can be symmetrical or asymmetrical. Alright, so write that down. Alright, next we are going to talk about symmetrical versus asymmetrical. So symmetrical is when things are visually balanced. So they're kind of evenly weighted on either side visually. Asymmetrical is when you have a work of art that is kind of unevenly balanced. So you have more stuff to one side than you do on the other. So I want you to take a look at these 2 paintings below. which one do you think is more symmetrical visually with like stuff, and which one is more asymmetrical? Which one's a little bit more unevenly balanced? So think about it. Okay, so the painting over here to the left with this little girl, this is an asymmetrically balanced work of art. So we have this huge group of people over here to the right and in the middle, but then it is balanced because having this little girl isolated over here to the left draws our eye over to the left. The painting over here to the right with the ballerinas is a more symmetrical painting. So we have these larger figures over here to the right that capture our interest in the foreground. And then the artist uses this grand, heavy weighted staircase to help even out the visual weight over here to the right. So for your example, you are more than welcome to use this little graphic up here with little triangles on the scale if you want. Or you can come up with your own. Maybe swap it out. Maybe you have rectangles instead of triangles, or little circles instead of triangles. Show me that you understand what balance is in the principles of design. All right, next we're going to talk about visual movement. So visual movement is used by an artist to direct the viewer's eye through a artwork, often to a focal area. So that's all you have to write down. Visual movement is used by an artist to direct the viewer's eye through the artwork, often to a focal area. The movement can be directed along lines, edges, shapes, and colors within the artwork. So here we have this painting up here. So the artist is using these hard lines to direct the viewer's eye to the most important part of the painting, which is where we see the man's hands. He's being freed. They're cutting that rope and setting him free. Same thing, and you can see how they do it down here with the little arrows. They kind of try to block it out, so you can kind of see how the artist is using movement to move your eye to the most important part of the painting. And the same thing down here. We have the illusion of movement down here where the artist is making things look blurry. The leash is whipping back and forth. The little ducks and dogs' legs are going really, really fast along with the owner's feet up here. So I want you to create the illusion of movement, please. So what you could do is you could draw like a little ball with the swish signs behind it, or something kind of going really fast to help direct the viewer's eye to the most important part of the painting or drawing. Rhythm. Okay, so rhythm is the repetition of visual movement. It could be used with colors, shapes, or lines. The variety helps keep the artwork exciting and active. So we're going to talk about the difference between repetition, pattern, and rhythm here. So I have this wonderful, simple little graphic, and it's really, really nice because it helps break it down really easy. So repetition is different than rhythm. Repetition is the same thing over and over again. Green rectangle, green rectangle, green rectangle, green rectangle. It's the same thing over and over again. A pattern is also different than rhythm. A pattern is the same thing that has different elements. It goes in a certain order, then it stops and starts over again. So purple, red, yellow, blue, red, green. Then it stops and starts again. Purple, red, yellow, blue, red, green. Stops and starts again. Rhythm, however, is having different things together. They might repeat, but they're kind of in a random, crazy order. So you're going to have some repetition at some point, but it's going to, be random, and you're not going to know when it's coming. So green, blue, yellow, red, purple, blue, yellow, red, purple, and it just kind of keeps going on. So same thing up here. So we have the repetition of these kind of similar trees up here in the top. They might repeat, but they're kind of random at the same time. They're not going to be exactly the same. So show me an example of rhythm. You could do it really simple, like red, yellow, blue, blue, red, yellow. You could choose, different colors. Choose like 3 different colors and have them randomly repeat. All right, next we're going to talk about contrast. So contrast refers to the differences in values, colors, textures, shapes and other elements. It helps it pop out. So over here to the right, or I'm sorry, to the left, we have this high value contrast, the black versus the bright white. You can have color contrast. So we have this picture of Marilyn Monroe, and she has really bright pink skin with yellow hair and the blue eyeshadow and the bright red lips. So having all of these colors together is making them stand out. You can have texture contrast, having the rough, scratchy wood against the crunchy froth on the leaf with the smoothness of the leaf. You can have warm versus cool color contrast, so having the warm colors next to the blue colors. So I want you to choose one. Probably the easiest one to do would be a color contrast or the high value contrast drawing, something with just black and white, maybe like a yin yang symbol. Yeah, so show me your example of contrast. Next, we're going to talk about emphasis. Okay, so emphasis is an area or object within the artwork that draws attention and becomes a focal point. The artist makes it stand out. So I want you to take a look up at Deadpool up here. How does the artist create emphasis with Deadpool? Think about it for a minute. So hopefully you're thinking they're using emphasis by having Deadpool all in color, and then all of the bad guys around him are in black and white. He's also in the middle too, so that helps draw our eye to the most important part of the painting. All right, we've got this still life down here. How does the artist create emphasis or use emphasis in this still life? So think about it for a minute. So the artist uses emphasis by not only putting this red apple in the middle of the painting, but it's among these other, there might be a little apple in the background there, but it's surrounded by these other like peaches and these more muted colors. All right, last but not least, take a look at Christina's world over here. How does the artist use emphasis? Well, one thing is he puts her right in the middle of the painting. There's not also a lot going on around her. There's some houses here in the background, but all here throughout the foreground and middle ground, there's not a lot. So our eye is just drawn to her. Also, he's using that contrast with the really dark hair and the dark shadows on her body. Around, she's wearing these very light colors, and she's in a pretty light colored, kind of muted field. So that helps draw our eye to her. Great. So I would like you to show me an example of emphasis. So maybe you're going to have like a whole bunch of yellow circles and maybe one red triangle. Show me your understanding of emphasis. All right, let's talk about pattern. So pattern is the combination of elements or shapes repeated in a reoccurring and regular arrangement. So Escher is a really awesome example of this. He was the master of repetition and pattern. So we've got these red Pegasus next to the kind of beigey yellow Pegasus, and he always finds a way to kind of interlock them and fool the eye. Same thing here, we have these geese, and as they go down, they slowly start to transform into fish, and the geese start to become that negative space that we talked about with our elements of art. So I would like you to please, once you are done drawing, or I'm sorry, once you are done writing down the definition of pattern, please show me an example of it in your sketchbook. All right, last one, unity. So unity is artwork that creates a sense of wholeness by using similar elements within the composition and placing them in a way that brings them all together to feel complete. So pretty much unity is just making things feel like they all go together. So I want you to take a look at this artwork over here. How does Kandinsky use and create unity in this work right here with the circles? So think about it. He does it in a few different ways. The first way that he does it is by using the repetition of circles. So we have big circles, medium circles, little teeny tiny circles. He also uses very similar colors. So even though he's mostly using kind of more, I would say, cool colors, he has a few pops of red, but mostly they have this kind of muted kind of tone to them. So he's using similar colors. All right, let's look at Van Gogh's Starry Night down here. This is probably Van Gogh's most famous painting. So how does he create unity? He also does it in a few different ways. The first way we could say is he's using similar colors, so he's using lots of blues and greens and these kind of like yellowy kind of colors. The other way is he's using these kind of like swirling motions up into the trees around the moon and the stars, so he's doing that. The last way is his texture, how he's doing his painting with his brush strokes. So he has these kind of little hash, almost like dotted lines, little brush strokes all throughout the painting, and it helps create this sense of unity. So I would like you to please try to create a example of unity. You could feel free and kind of mimic Kandinsky's several circles up here if you want to. All right, what I would like you to do is finish that up. Make sure this is glued into your sketchbook, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much.